even before he became king, was celebrated. Because we're reading Ramayana, it was this, is it Bharata or is it, because there are two different principles. One was Dasrath gave a promise to Kushadwaj, the father of Kaikeyi, your daughter's son will become king. And so there's that principle, and then the eldest son, and so forth. So the standard is the eldest son. So which takes precedence? Very, very complicated sometimes, isn't it? There's this principle and there's that principle, and which one prevails, which one goes in the priority position, which one goes in the lesser position. In our lives, it's a little complicated. That's a Mahabharata reference. Where Yamaraj said, how are you supposed to, the Yaksha said, how are you supposed to know? This conflicts with that, and you're supposed to do both. What do you do? Yudhishthira said, you're right, it's very difficult, but so you follow the path of the great soul. So the elder son was to become the king. So Upananda accepted the kingdom, but transferred it to the qualified younger brother. So both was fulfilled. Yet when it came time for moving from Gokul back to Vrindavan, there was an elders meeting which Upananda presided over. Although Nanda was the king, he deferred to his elder brother. And Upananda decided various reasons. Main reason was too much calamity over here in Gokula. Yeah, so we should move to another place for the safety of the children, particularly Krishna Balaram. Everyone's affection went to Krishna Balaram. And another was fresh grasses, because the cows over here have really trampled down everything, and we need fresh grasses for the cows. We have to take care of the cows and take care of the children. So let's go. And everyone agreed, yes, let's go. So they went. And the commentary says, when Krishna and Balaram, they were babbling like little children will babble sometimes, saying funny things. And those details, when they reached, Krishna was very happy. Commentary, the verse says, and the commentary explains, why? Three things. Govardhan Hill, the forest of Vrindavan, and the banks of the river Jamuna. So Girivadadari is in the song, but Yamunatira Vanachari, he was enjoying the forest of Vrindavan and the banks of the river Jamuna. They were over the top. They were really happy. Really happy. And then his pastime, although he was very young, 3 years. How old was your daughter? 4. 3 years, 4 months. He wanted to go out with Nanda Maharaj with the cows. Anyway, so then his cowherd pastime began in Vrindavan. It wasn't there in Gokula, but it began. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. So there's a connection between chanting and Bhagavatam. Chanting is everything, and the Bhagavatam is everything. Because the Bhagavatam will nourish chanting, and chanting will give you entrance into more deeply understanding the Bhagavatam. Because names of Krishna are what we chant, and the names of Krishna, they're revealed through the Bhagavatam. So it's a perfect complement. And this, I'm not sure when it is, but some devotees from Gainesville, there's a Krishna house in Gainesville. I mentioned this already. So I've been meditating on the leader of that group of the Krishna house. They're going to visit in Houston. They would like me to give 2 classes on something practical like chanting. So one of the classes is going to be how to go more deeply in chanting is read Srimad Bhagavatam carefully. and you read Srimad Bhagavatam more carefully, it'll help you go more deeply into chanting. So that's a hint for everybody here. You want to go more deeply into your chanting. Read Bhagavatam also. Now, a little review from yesterday. That's the other part I wanted to speak about, then we'll continue. Yesterday was the last verse of the description by the Avadhuta Brahmana to King Yadu on one of the gurus that he learned from. And one of the gurus that he learned from was a young girl who, in the lesson of the bangles. So we heard two things yesterday, conclusion. One was for those who are gyanis, and it doesn't specifically indicate that the Avadhuta Brahmana was a gyani, but he's presenting gyan leads to detachment, gyan vairagya. That is a couplet throughout all of the Vedas, gyan vairagya, knowledge, detachment. For what end? Well, for devotees, it's taking shelter of Krishna. But for gyanis that don't have bhakti, it's prescribed that they live alone. And live alone means they go away from society, etc., etc. Take a renounced life like this Avadhuta Brahmana had done. But the Avadhuta Brahmana was visiting all kinds of people. He was visiting King Yadu, and he was, according to one of the commentaries, he took rest in the courtyard of a prostitute. So in that he was in Videha. But he didn't just stay in the forest. He was in a city, big city. The description of Vishwamitra Muni and Ram and Lakshman entering into the precincts of Videha. It's like the big city. So, but he kept to himself because he was at least a renunciate of the kind of a gyan kind. So those who are gyanis, they stay alone and this and that. Then so that was the one bracelet on each arm, so it didn't make, because you put more than one bracelet and it's going to make some noise. So similarly, you bring some people together and there's going to be some noise, something, guaranteed. So if you don't want noise, stay alone. If you're Gyani, you're supposed to live solitary life. However, we also heard that a devotee can live a solitary life by associating with sadhus. So there's the two things. The devotee should be, on the one hand, careful in continuing to mix or mixing intimately with those who aren't devotees of the Supreme Lord. And there's, every one of us. As I was reading this, I was thinking about my college days. And then I was also thinking about, so many years of devotional service and hearing from devotees. What happened when they became a devotee? Their friends, my friends, I wasn't fun anymore. Like, I didn't like to do the stuff that we used to do together. And they were like, what happened to you? Like there's something wrong with you. So it can be relatives, extended family members. It can be the social circle that you are accustomed to being with. And it's like, there's expectations of you and your attachment for all of that. What do? It's a space that anyone who takes up a life of devotion has to transit through. My realization was they weren't really my friends. There was, I scratch your back, you scratch mine, and that's our friendship. And if you stop scratching my back, hey, are you sure that you're my friend? Scratch my back, please. And if you don't, then there's something wrong with you. And then they start to criticize what you're doing and so forth because they have their expectations. It's not real friendship. What's real friendship? That's a good question. Real friendship, from a Shastra point of view, is your best friend is someone that will remind you of Krishna, and your being a best friend of someone is to remind them of Krishna. Yena tena pakaranin mana Krishna naveshayat. Or there's different verses that say the same thing. Starva vidhi nishedashur etayori vikinkara. All the vidhis and nishedas, the do's and the don'ts, the injunctions and the prohibitions have one purpose. What's that? What's the one purpose? Manat Krishna naveshayat. Always remember Krishna. So your best friend is one who helps you. And it doesn't mean you don't do other things. You know, if somebody has a health problem, you don't cook for them or clean for them or help them with their physical requirements. You do those things, but the purpose of doing those things has one purpose. All the do's and the don'ts have a purpose. Now, what do you do with, this was the discussion yesterday, just reviewing it, thinking about it. It's something we all face. What do you do with those family members or circle of friends or et cetera, that they don't have that principle. They don't have that always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. They have all kinds of other things going on, and maybe not, some of the remember Krishna part. Or, you know, in other words, piety has its material definition and piety has its transcendental definition. And what's the transcendental definition of piety? Love of God. What's the goal of Dharma? What's Dharma? Oh, I have a little device that's about this big, and it's loaded up with all the Prabhupada's lectures on everything. And so I listen to it every day, at least 3 times. And you know, there's a section that I'm listening to. It's like every class is on the same point. What's Dharma? Dharma means a characteristic. Sugar is sweet, chili is hot. You go to the marketplace and you want to test the chilies. Is it hot? If it's not hot, it's not a good chili. And if something is bitter, then that's not sugar. Sugar's got to be sweet. So everything has its characteristic. What's the characteristic of the living entity? What's the dharma of the living entity? Service. We're all serving. We serve somebody or something. And if you don't have somebody or something, commonly Prabhupada would say, you serve dog. If you don't serve God, you serve dog. And so you serve, but in multiple services, but that's the living entity, like sugar is sweet or chili is hot. Living entities serve. And the paradharma is service to God. Paradharma, the perfection of service. So it doesn't mean you don't serve others, but those service to others is in connection with paradharma. That's the Bhagavatam's message. That's the life of a living entity in its elevated state of consciousness. So we eagerly seek the many mangles, or the situation where there's companionship with devotees, like that you heard this expression. Bhakti Devi, she has many, many ornaments. Those ornaments are the Vaishnavas. And the Vaishnavas, she's the ornament of the Vaishnavas. Either way, it's correct either way. So devotees want association of devotees. That's the nature. And the nature of a devotee is that we're polite with others, but the social nuances that made up our lives before bhakti entered into our lives, it fades. We're polite, but its importance fades. And when its importance fades, we're not fun anymore. Like, what's going on with you? You become a fanatic and all those kinds of things. It's just a liking, a disposition for paradharma. That's the lesson from the young girl with the bangles. one of the lessons that we heard yesterday. So now we're going on to the next of the 24 gurus, and that's the yogi. So that yesterday was the Gyani, and today is the yogi. What we're going to learn from a yogi. Here's what we're going to learn from a yogi, according to the Avadhuta Brahman. Text 11. Having perfected the yoga sitting postures and conquered the breathing processes, one should make the mind steady by detachment and regulated practice of yoga. Thus, one should carefully fix the mind on the single goal of yoga practice. What's that single goal of yoga practice? Remember Krishna, don't forget Krishna. What's the goal of life? Yoga is to help you achieve the goal of life. What's the goal of life? Another phrase that Prabhupada repeated, like invariably, na te vidu svartakatim hi Vishnu. It's Prahlad speaking to his father, Hiranyakashipu, and Hiranyakashipu wants to know, where'd you get this bhakti thing? We didn't teach that in school. You didn't teach that in home. Where'd you get this bhakti thing? And Prahlad, that's the first thing Prahlad says to his father. Na te vidu svartakatimi Vishnu durashaya e bahir artha maninas. Bahir artha. Persons like you, Hiranyakashipu, who are too much attached to the temporary, you look outside. You don't know what's inside. The goal of life is inside. It's already there, but you don't know it. The goal is Vishnu. Oh, Vishnu. He's the enemy. Okay, so Bhaktisiddhanta's paraphrasing of this verse, the translation. One should perfect his yoga sitting postures and breathing exercises while carefully cultivating a life of renunciation. Thus, with single-minded attention, one should engage in yoga, making it the goal of his life. The BBT purport reads, one should develop vairagya or detachment by observing that all material things are doomed. That from all the other lessons, the temporary nature of anything. Thus, one should take to the regulated practice of yoga, which in this age means the process of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Avadhuta Brahmana is recommending Bhakti Mishra Ashtanga Yoga, or the eightfold mystic yoga process performed as an offering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, there's two more paragraphs, but I'll just explain. We've already had some discussion about Kapila Dev. Kapila Dev? Kapila Dev is one of the incarnations of the Supreme Lord. And he taught Sankhya philosophy to his mother, Devahuti. Sankhya philosophy, Kapila Dev, the teacher of Sankhya philosophy. But when you read that section of Sankhya philosophy, it's Canto 3, chapters 25 through like 31. He's teaching Sankhya philosophy, and then he teaches meditation. Because what's the age in which he appears? It's Satyuga. What do you do in Satyuga? Meditation. How do you do meditation? The Ashtanga Yoga system. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dhyana, Dharana, Samadhi. It ends in Samadhi, but to get to Samadhi, you do the Ashtanga Yoga steps. So meditation is the conclusion. And what's the end? When you get to the stage of Samadhi, what do? Devotional service. Sankhya, analytical study of matter and spirit, and the Eightfold Yoga system, both, one leads to the next, leads to bhakti. Because he's an incarnation of Vishnu. He's going to teach, and he teaches bhakti. It's one of the two of the chapters in that section. Say it again. The purpose of Ashtanga Yoga is to reach bhakti. The purpose of Sankhya is to reach bhakti. If you don't have bhakti, wasting your time. You can have a good intellect, you can discriminate things, but you're not going to reach the goal. You can be a good, asana person, teach asana yoga in a yoga class, earn your living, etc., etc. But you can't reach the goal without bhakti. Each of these things leads to everything in all of the Vedas, not just these two things, knowledge and detachment, Ashtanga Yoga. Where does it lead? What's the goal? It's the final stage of the bhakti of the yoga process is bhakti. That's the yoga ladder, Bhagavad Gita. Over and over, it's taught. So the Avadutta Brahmana, the age in which he's speaking is not the same age as Kapila, but the knowledge doesn't change over time. So understanding the temporary nature of things, engage in the Ashtanga Yoga process, connected with bhakti, leading to bhakti. Or otherwise, it's not, you won't get there, it's incomplete. Paragraph. The desire to enjoy the material world is so strong that the mind wanders here and there uncontrollably. Put your hand into big bag and check it out. Mind wanders here and there uncontrollably. Therefore, it is stated, Driya Mana. The mind must be fixed in the goal of life, the Supreme Personality Godhead. In the perfect stage of mental concentration called Samadhi, there is no longer any distinction between internal and external vision, since one can see the absolute truth everywhere. Paragraph. In the mystic yoga process, that's what the verse is about, one must sit properly, and then it is possible to control the different airs within the body. When the breathing process is controlled, the mind, which is dependent upon the actions of bodily airs, is easily fixed in higher consciousness. But although the mind may be momentarily controlled if one is overcome by desire for sense gratification, the mind will again be lost. Thus, this verse emphasizes vairagya, or detachment from material illusion. This is attained by abhyasa yoga, or the regulated practice of Krishna consciousness, by which is the highest yoga system, as confirmed in the last verse of chapter 6. You know the verse, Yogi Namapi Sarve Sham. Who knows the rest? Madgatena Antaratmana, Shradhavan Bhajate Yomam, Same Yukta Tamo Mataha. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshiping me with transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. Now, just two more little commentaries. One is Bhakti Siddhanta is paraphrasing Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. One should practice concentrating his mind. This lesson is to be learned from, the arrow maker. We didn't do the arrow maker yet. What's going on? Anyway, the mind is always flickering due to material attachment, wandering here and there. Here is recommended to perfect a life of renunciation. One should practice Ashtanga Yoga mixed with devotional service. So it's not about the yogi, it's about an arrow maker. So that's, okay, I got it. Because that's one of the teachers, or one of the gurus is the arrow maker. So he's speaking of Ashtanga Yoga, but the reference is an arrow maker. So Vishwanath writes, he learned fixing the mind from the arrow maker. This is explained in 3 verses. The mind is unsteady because what? The strength of attachment. Therefore, one must make the mind steady by detachment, vairagya, and practice dharana of Ashtanga Yoga mixed with bhakti. Now, how to understand a statement like this in the context of the whole of the Bhagavatam? It's not that someone that likes Ashtanga Yoga can say, look, even Krishna's teaching, do Ashtanga Yoga mixed with bhakti. But the big picture is it's a ladder, like Bhagavad Gita, there's a ladder, and it's all leading to something. Just like 90% of the Vedas, which is knowledge, transcendental knowledge, it deals with karma kanda. So someone can say, look, karma kanda, it's in the Vedas. So where does that karma kanda lead to? It's making wet wood into dry wood, and then you have to ignite it. So what's the igniting process? It's not in and of itself standalone. It's a part of a gradual process. So then from karma kanda comes karma yoga, dedication of the results, not to the demigods, but to Vishnu. And then so forth, without going through the whole yoga ladder. It's how to understand statements in Bhagavad Gita or the Bhagavatam that are part of a trajectory of spiritual evolution. Then what's the goal? Very important to know the goal. Very important. A phrase that Prabhupada spoke often, because he repeated it, captured my attention. Prabhupada said, when you have well-defined the goal, it's very easy to make steps to get there. If you don't have a well-defined goal, it's hard to get there. Another way of saying the same thing is sankalpa. In karma kanda, sankalpa is a big deal. In bhakti, sankalpa is a big deal. In life, sankalpa is a big deal. There's a freshman in college that wrote me a letter recently, really long. And one of the things was his career choice. So without going into what that exchange was, it's real important. He wants to this and he wants that. He wants to have Krishna not disappear because he's pursuing a career. But he wants to do a career that matches his psychophysical nature. He didn't use that language. But it was like he very carefully analyzed things, the trajectory of his thoughts over the past number of years about what his career might look like. So that's like the psychophysical part. But he has nice training and devotion, good family, good association amongst his peers. He has a clear understanding. He has a reasonably clear understanding that he wants Krishna to be at the center, not off in a parking lot somewhere. So how to pursue whatever it is that matches your nature, and Krishna is at the center. That's the art of living. And it's different things at different times of life for different persons. And so it's not a cookie cutter thing, it's a principle. And how do you apply that principle given this situation that transforms to that situation and the evolving trajectory of spiritual realization? But you have to have a goal, a career goal for this young man, and a Krishna-centered goal. Defining the goal is important. So whether it's Jnana Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, what's the goal? And you can have intermediate goals, but the intermediate goals have to be aligned with the long-term goal. And it's really important from reading Srimad Bhagavatam to get a refinement of what the long-term goal is. So your intermediate goals can then be aligned with the long-term goal in accordance with scripture. Guru Sadhu Shastra keeps us alignment. There's some internal work you have to do. Continue to refine, where is my compass taking me? Am I headed for the right direction as I'm moving along? Because we can get distracted as we move along. Okay, so now we're going to go to text 12. This is now the arrow maker is the person, and the Ashtanga Yoga is the method. So here's the text 12. The mind can be controlled when it is fixed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yay. The bhakti is emerging out of the Ashtanga Yoga. Having achieved a stable situation, the mind becomes free from polluted desires to execute material activities, semicolon. Thus, as the mode of goodness increases in strength, one can completely give up the modes of passion and ignorance, and gradually one transcends even the material mode of goodness. When the mind is freed from the fuel of the modes of nature, the fire of material existence is extinguished. Yay, have a celebration, just like her birthday coming up. I heard there's a birthday cake. That's an intermediate step. She's not there yet. Modes of nature haven't stopped yet. Then, one achieves the transcendental platform of direct relationship with the object of his meditation, the Supreme Lord. Bhakti Siddhanta made the following variant translation of that verse. The mind can be controlled when it is fixed on the Supreme Personality, Godhead, paragraph. When the mind is thus applied to the service of the Lord, it becomes free from polluted desires for sense gratification, so that as the mode of goodness increases in strength, one can completely give up the modes of passion and ignorance. When the mind is no longer fed, the fuel of the modes of nature, the fire of material existence becomes extinguished, so that one achieves the transcendental platform of direct relationship with the object of his meditation, the Supreme Lord. Those of you that know Shikshastaka, the first verse, Chaitadarpana Marjanam is the first of the seven. Bhava Maha Davagi Devat, the blazing fire of material existence is extinguished. That's just from chanting, or the process of bhakti that awakens from chanting. BBT purport: the interaction of the three modes of nature creates great obstacles in one's path of spiritual advancement, and there is danger that one may be thrown down into the darkness of ignorance. Those who are experienced in practical psychology know the dangers of uncontrolled mind and constantly endeavor to bring the mind under control. If one can free oneself from the influence of the material modes of passion and ignorance, then life becomes very auspicious. Controlling the mind and thereby freeing oneself from the influence of the material modes of nature is the only means of making actual progress in life. The word Yasmin in this verse, according to Srila Sridhar Swami, indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the reservoir of all pleasure. Giving up the material propensities of the mind does not mean merging into an impersonal existence, such as that experienced in dreamless sleep. As stated in this verse, Satvena Vridhena, or one must become firmly established in the mode of goodness, and then gradually rise onto the spiritual platform where one may dwell in the company of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here's Bhakti Siddhanta's purport. The three modes of material nature create conflict among one another. For that reason, those who are actually intelligent carefully control their mind. When one is freed from the influence of the modes of passion and ignorance, one achieves a life of auspiciousness. It is only possible to transcend the three modes of material nature when the mind is fully under control. We have a ways to go, right? Modes of nature are acting the summary of Vishwanath's commentary by Bhaktisiddhanta. When the mind is controlled and restrained from the desire of performing fruitive activities, it becomes cleansed of the contamination of passion and ignorance through an increase of the mode of goodness. When the mind is no longer influenced by the mode of passion and ignorance, it becomes steady. And as a result of being situated in the mode of goodness, one becomes joyful. And the last is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's actual commentary. When the mind attains its goal of concentration, it gradually becomes free from the desire of actions. Destroying rajas and tamas by increase of sattva, one then attains a condition of bliss, devoid of all gunas, with no influence of the gunas or its effects. Paragraph. When the mind attains its goal, it gives up the desires for action, destroying rajas and tamas by increase of sattva, when it attains a condition devoid of extraneous actions of the mind, being free of agitation and sloth, and attains supreme bliss, nirvanam, because of disappearance of even sattva. It is without fuel, since it is devoid of the gunas and their effects. Now, Shruti Mangara prepared a few slides that illustrate this. I don't know if you can see. Those of you that are away from the screen won't be able to see. Okay. Is that good? I hope you can see. So this is from text 11. Having perfected the yoga sitting postures and conquered the breathing process, one should make the mind steady by detachment and the regulated practice of yoga. Thus, one should carefully fix the mind on the single goal of yoga practice. Now notice super soul is in the heart, and it looks like somebody's holding a bead bag, maybe not have their hands in front of them, but it's a very creative illustration of the perfection of yoga practice in any case. And here's another very interesting illustration. This is also from text 11. There's a yogi and he's got nice balance in both hands. So the text that goes along with this is, the desire to enjoy the material world is so strong that the mind wanders here and there uncontrollably. Therefore, it is stated, dhyam manam. Dhya manam. The mind must be fixed in the goal of life, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the perfect stage of mental concentration called samadhi. There is no longer any distinction between internal and external vision, since one can see the absolute truth everywhere. So that person looks pretty fixed. And here's text 12, some explanation. The mind can be controlled when it is fixed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Having achieved a stable situation, the mind becomes free from polluted desires to execute material activities. Thus, as the mode of goodness increases in strength, one can completely give up the mode of passion and ignorance, and gradually one transcends even the material mode of goodness. So the illustration on the right is lower modes, middle modes, higher modes, transcendence. The workers, the passionate businessman, the philosopher, and the yogis, and then the kirtan devotees, and the spiritual world. It's a nice painting, huh? And Uh, one more. There's a fire, blazing fire. And the text that goes with it. When the mind is freed from the fuel of the modes of nature, the fire of material existence is extinguished. Then one achieves the transcendental platform of direct relationship with the object of meditation, the Supreme Lord. And that's the spiritual world, Vaikuntha. As stated in this verse, Satvena Vridhena, one must become firmly established in the mode of goodness and then gradually rise onto the spiritual platform where one may dwell in the company of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the Vaikuntha painting. And we didn't get there yet, but the third verse of this section is the arrow maker. There's the arrow maker. So we'll get there tomorrow. Okay. So it's 18 minutes after. Let's see if there's some comments. I've kind of elaborated a bunch. So let's see if there's something in the room first before we go online, and then we'll go online. Anybody in the room would like to contribute something?
Maharaj, I had this question. Before coming into Krishna consciousness, my meditating practice was some yoga postures, then some meditation, some guided meditation, and then chanting. And this was the question I got in my mind this morning as well, that now I only wake up and I chant in the morning. So should we continue some form of yoga and pranayam before we go into our chanting of Hare Krishna mantra?
Your question that should, and hang on. Yeah, just shut it off. Shut it off. There's no harm if you do, but it's not that you should. Prabhupada didn't teach us to. He didn't say that we shouldn't. He didn't say that we should. Now there's a sannyasi whose name I won't mention. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Back. Okay. Sorry about that. Oh, audience out there. One sannyasi teaches yoga. He's like a really good yoga teacher. So I had, privately had a conversation with him, purposely not mentioning his name, and said, "What do you think?" And he said, is that, Prabhupada didn't teach us this, Prabhupada disciple. And he said, I know it's a dependency, but right now, I do it because I was doing it, So this is a sannyasi, a leader in our movement. So he still does, but he understands it's a dependency and it's not that he shouldn't, nor is it that you should. I don't. But says there's no niyama smarane nikalaha. There's no fixed rule about you should or shouldn't do this or that. But the most important thing is the most important thing. Make sure that's in the priority position. Because one of the risks of something else is the faith goes to that something else instead of to where it should go. You take something that may assist and it becomes more primary than secondary. It's not something, that, to my knowledge, not something our acharyas espoused. So, Mahajanayena Katasantanta. Okay? That help?
That really answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Over to the side here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for wonderful lecture. Maharaj, question is like, so detachment from this material desires and sense gratification. But often in our minds, okay, this once this fulfills, then we can stop it like that. But I often notice it that something fulfills, the next sprouts.
There's two more.
And your
Dushparena anulena cha. Right?
So how to seize that?
How to do which?
How to seize that?
Cease?
Yeah.
Cease?
Yeah.
Stop?
Stop. Yeah.
Okay. Gradually. Gradually means there are some things that just don't have any place whatsoever, and you drop them. And then there are some other things that, because the mind keeps going there, you can't just drop them. I mean, it's not working to just drop them. So then you gradually, you regulate. With the aim of ceasing. And the ceasing is possible by sat. Asat is diminished by attachment to sat. So find the ways and means that your attention can go to sat. Satyasar, if you can lean that way a little bit, that would help. Thanks. Because otherwise you have to cut your head off. That wouldn't be good. Regulation of something unwanted, but it's persistent. And then while that's going on, develop attachment to sat in ways that work for you. So, the 9 processes of bhakti. There's, some people in there, or combination, whatever works for you. Because the goal is attachment to sat, and that will diminish and eventually eliminate affinity for asat. And knowledge, this is another one. Prabhupada is very powerful. There's no question of detachment without knowledge. Knowledge alone is not enough. Even knowledge and detachment together are not enough, but there's no detachment without knowledge. So transcendental knowledge means connect with Krishna. Incomplete knowledge is just be detached. So it's attachment to Sat, to the personality of Godhead, while regulating that which is, keeps coming back and keeps coming back and keeps coming back due to attachment, conditioning. So we put it in its place, it's over there. We don't allow it to become bigger than over there. Because, you give yield to it, it becomes 3 of them. Okay. Yes. We have our little protocols because of the pandemic. I hope it's okay.
First of all, thank you so much for blessing us. Real pleasure for you to come and bless me. I wanted to ask a question. Although both Neha and I have been blessed with bhakti since our childhood, but there was 15 years back that I was reading a non-spiritual book, which made me realize my purpose of life is to help us. It was not based on definition of service. It was just to help others materially. Now, under Satyasara Prabhu, and after coming to America, we got connected with ISKCON very much, and now we serve also the congregation. But oftentimes I am seeing a conflict between my goal that I set 15 years back to materially help others versus uh, doing service this economy. I cherish both, but there is a conflict because I have only limited time. How do I handle it? Thank you so much.
Similar to the previous question, the application is, we'll spend some time. The application is, depending upon how strong your bhakti is, you can select some areas of bhakti that fit into the holistic picture of serving others while nurturing self-awareness or knowing themselves. I'll give an example. Here's an example. Comes to mind. In 2010, I was the chairman of the GBC. No one trained me, what's the job description or how to do it. So one of the things that happened was in one of those islands in the Caribbean, there was a cyclone, hurricane, or whatever it was, and knocked over half the island. People were really in desperate situation. Their homes, their crops, their lives, everything totally disrupted. So I thought, gosh, we're supposed to do something. We're a service organization, but I don't know what to do. And then a whole bunch of people started contacting me because I was the chairman of the GBC, saying, what's ISKCON going to do for this situation? So little light went on, and I said, I know somebody in Santo Domingo, which is not far from that island. Would you be willing to be the contact person when people that want to help? You can, be the traffic conductor. He agreed. So anybody that contacted me, they went to that person and they did stuff. Now, I was traveling, passed through London airport and met like 15 of those people on their way to that country. I'm saying that country, I can't even remember the name of the country. It was a calamity. So I said, wow, where are you guys going? Because I was in a Dodi and they were in Dodi. So where are you going? We're going to that country. So tell me what your plan is. And they were really clear. I know how to build houses. I know how to do this. I know how to do that. We got our equipment. It's in our luggage. And we have lots of books because it was a French-speaking country. And, we have books and we have beads. So we're not just going to build houses and help people get their lives back together, but we're going to teach them to chant Hare Krishna and give them books in their language and help them understand the life of bhakti. That's the holistic picture. So it's not just, we're not a philanthropic organization, we're a spiritual organization. We don't trash helping people, but we do in such a way that bhakti can awaken. Another practical example, the Bhaktivedanta Hospital. Prabhupada many times said, don't open schools, hospitals. That's just philanthropy and altruism. But the Bhaktivedanta Hospital, somebody was criticizing because Bhaktisiddhanta said da-da-da-da. So they met in front of the GBC and they explained, here's how many people who have become initiated devotees. Here's how many, we have our statistics because we have our mission, not just helping wellness. We have our mission of awakening spiritual purpose of life, etc. Those are two examples. Something just got this holistic picture, but at the center is Krishna. It's just like, your family. It's not just that the purpose of family is your young daughter is supposed to become a nice devotee. You do all kinds of stuff for her health and for her comfort and her affections and this and that and the other thing. You do, the holistic pictures for yourself and for your relationship as husband and wife is the holistic picture. But you put Krishna at the center and you do that. My suggestion is you do it nicely at home, you'll get a clear idea how to do it outside the home. You don't do it in the home, you won't get a clear idea how to do it outside the home. You'll be stuck with this and that. Charity begins at home. Krishna at the center. It doesn't mean drop the other stuff, but Krishna's at the center. We each have our nature, we have our values. Align your behaviors and your values with the deepest core convictions of your life. That alignment is certainly possible. If you're out of alignment, go to a chiropractor. Get somebody that can guide you how to align your values and your behaviors with the purpose. It starts in the family. And it extends out. It starts in your own heart. And it extends out. Holistic approach. There's many examples. Many examples. I'm tempted. I'm going to say one more. Somebody I know, in their youth, they got a good education. They finished their such and such degree. They got married. They had 2 children. So now the wife was busy with the children. And then at a certain stage, she was feeling restless. And she understood it's because I'm not using my psychophysical nature. So she started going down the path of, she tried to do it in ISKCON. And so anyway, she became a teacher. Now she's like, a celebrity at school. And she is a celebrity in the community because she really likes education. She really likes helping kids. She's really gifted. But Krishna's at the center. And her own children, her son, they didn't push their son, the older child, to chant. But he likes chanting. Just on his own. Now, supposing he doesn't like chanting at all, but he likes chanting. And he's a wizard. I forget his age, something like 10 or something like that. He did an online class. Listen to this. He did an online class for kids his age to teach them something about computers, the computer programming 101 or something like that. And there was a fee, and he gave the donation to the Food for Life program in India because he liked what they do. Etc. And the parents have this value that's their language is a holistic picture of themselves and children and life and how they reach other people. In his career, he was just promoted, without seeking promotion. He was promoted to a CEO position because, he's just his character and his performance. He wasn't trying for that. Previously, he was trying for that, and it was the opposite was happening. You put Krishna in the center in a holistic picture of life, and all kinds of doors open that weren't even there before. At least you didn't see them. And then they open, like, wow. Okay, let's go online.
So there are 5 questions here.
Okay, let's go.
Guru Maharaj,
Can you leave the preamble,
Yeah.
the stuff off the beginning?
there was a reference on practical psychology in the class. Is it a right understanding that goal of practical psychology is to bring the mind in mode of goodness?
Well, the practical psychology is to bring the mind to Krishna. And part of that is bring the mind to the mode of goodness, yes.
Okay. Second question. Guru Maharaj, education system thought ultimate goal of life is mode of goodness.
No,
Guru, Krishna and Shastra teaching us devotional service as ultimate goal. So stability in devotional life can be achieved without mode of goodness.
you can't ignite fire with wet wood. Meaning, come to the mode of goodness is an intermediate step. That is diminishing ignorance and passion. And then from the mode of goodness, you can get fire, you can get transcendence. There's a wonderful verse that says all of that in Canto 1, Chapter 2, Bhagavatam. Tadara Justamo Bhava Kamalobhadaya Sicheta Eterabidam Sitvam Sattve Prasidati. I don't know the verse number, Canto 1, Chapter 2, text number. She's going to look it up. You're looking up the verse? Okay, thanks. Next.
Next from Zoom. In Prabhupada's movement, there are so many great devotees. How do we know who attained love of God? By what symptoms is such a devotee known?
Well, you read Bhagavad Gita, the symptoms are there. So do your own homework. Read Bhagavad Gita, the symptoms of a self-realized soul are there. Go ahead.
The second question from the same person. We get in the habit of multitasking. Sometimes it cannot be helped. How to come out of this habit?
Chant good japa. When you're chanting japa, you're just doing one thing, chanting attentively. It's discussed. The question that you're asking is a practical application question. The means is described. Abhyasa yoga yuktena cetasa nanyagamino. You have to continue to practice when you're particularly the yoga dharma is being performed, the chanting of the holy name, you're focused. And you're unfocused because of the modes of nature and the mind goes here and there. You continue to strive. This is called yearning, strive to be with Krishna. If you don't have that intention to be with Krishna, you won't get very far with the multitasking challenge. Strive to be with Krishna, and he's there in his name. Next.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, if our friends see our progress in material life and spiritual life and envy us, then will it affect us in any way?
Well, it'll affect you in any way if you feel that's really important. And if you don't feel it, who is it that you're trying to please? Ask yourself that question, and then the answer will be, it'll affect you or it won't affect you.
That's all
Okay.
on my questions.
Anything else in the room?
The verse is 1 to 19.
1 to 19. 1 to 19. Tadara Justamo Bhava. 1 to 19.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is, after coming to US,
Take away the mask because it'll be easier to understand. Then you can put it back. Okay?
Yeah. So my question is, after coming to US, I miss being in Vrindavan.
You miss being in Vrindavan.
Yeah.
Good for you.
No, but I really miss it.
That's okay. When you can't be there, the heart goes there. That's in the instruction of our acharyas. Now, it doesn't mean that hankering to be there goes away, but that's fulfilling the purpose of being there, is the hankering to be there. And, be accepting of the circumstances while that hankering continues. You're like, it's not the same, of course, but it's like the gopis hankering to be with Krishna. And Krishna isn't always there. But hankering to be with Krishna is ecstatic. Now, it doesn't feel ecstatic. It feels like, I want Krishna to be here. But that's a transcendental emotion. So get used to transcendental emotions, because it's not always going to be the way you like it to be. But the transcendental emotion is transcendental emotion. It's nice. You're very fortunate. Keep crying. It's okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much, Prabhupada Ki.
Yeah.
Jai.
Yeah.